Fjord's Woodshop is sponsored by MiniMax and by I Would Like. Check out their products at iwouldlike.com.
Today is a good day because earlier this morning I went out and I picked up this beautiful bit of kit here. Now this is my brand new MiniMax FS30 Classic, and it is a 300mm or 12-inch combination surface planer and thicknesser. So we have the planer up top and the thicknesser below. Now in this video we're going to go back a few hours and I'm going to show you how I went about setting this machine up and getting it tuned to perfection. So the MiniMax FS30 Classic comes on a single pallet and it only really requires a little bit of assembly. So on the pallet you'll of course have the main machine itself, so the big unit, but stored on the pallet you'll have your solid fence, so a nice big aluminium fence here. You'll have your European style blade guard. You'll have your bag of goodies with all the hardware and tooling you need to assemble it. You've got your hand wheels, and of course you've got your documentation with instructions and all of those good things. Now before we jump into getting all of this installed onto the machine, we have a bit of cleanup to do. So every new machine will have some sort of rust preventative on its cast iron and exposed steel surfaces. Now generally it's sort of a thick greasy layer and generally it's pretty sticky too, and you definitely want to remove that before trying to operate the machine because, well, for one, your wood won't go anywhere and it'll get very dirty. Now on this particular machine, being a combination machine, we've got these two tables here which need cleaning, but we've also got the thicknesses table under here. But as this is still in transport mode, we've got these two metal brackets that need to be removed. So once we're done cleaning the top, we can flip these tables out of the way and start on that table. Now removing this is a pretty messy job, so I definitely recommend you get yourself some gloves for this. Now what I use to do this is mineral terps here, so it will kind of break it down. And once I've gone over it thoroughly with the mineral terps to get rid of the most part, so the bulk of the grease, I'll switch over to either a wax and grease remover that you'll use for automotive painting or a automotive degreaser, so not the detergent type but the solvent type, to get the last of that residue up. So the real secret though is having plenty of rags which you can keep turning and folding, and once it's just spreading grease, throw it out and get a new rag. Another place to make sure you get all your grease removed is your cutter block, as well as your infeed and outfeed rollers, because grease and sawdust do not mix, and when those things get stuck together, it's bad news for not only your finish but also for your machine. It can promote premature wearing. So make sure your cutter head is nice and clean, infeed, outfeed, and really anywhere around your machine that's going to be exposed to dust. And so with everything nice and clean, we can start getting this thing assembled. So like I said, there really isn't all that much that needs doing here. So the fence, that comes already assembled right here. So all we have to do is drop this onto its rail, which on this particular machine is down this end. Slide it back and just lock it in place. That's the fence done. So the blade guard just gets attached to the outfeed table using the two screws that are already installed. Now the last thing that we need to do is install the knives, and this particular machine uses a really interesting cutter head, and it's called a Tersa cutter head. And what it is it's a straight knife cutter head, so it's not like the new spiral ones. But instead of you having to manually set the blade and do the gibs and make sure it's level across the length and do these things which take hours if you haven't had 20 years experience doing it, instead it uses these knives here, which you just slide in from the side of the cutter head like so, and it's perfectly indexed. So you slide in, you fire up your machine, and then it uses centrifugal force to actually drive the wedges which hold them in place, and you're pretty much ready to go. So your knives are perfectly set every time. Now to install these knives, you can do it with this guard in place. There is the ability to do it, but it's easier to do it with it out of place, and as this is my first time, I might as well make it as easy as I can on myself. So we just remove one side completely. So we just line up the opening in the cutter head to that hole, and we just slide the knives in. Now, unlike your conventional straight knife cutter head, this doesn't use gib screws, it's just a centrifugal sort of force deal. So there we go, it's just sliding in. Now we just need a little dowel or something, and I've got this little bit of cable. Slide that through, and there we have it. So there's our first knife set. Now we're almost ready to fire this thing up, but first we should check a few things and make any adjustments if we need to. The first thing that we need to check is just that our in-feed and out-feed tables of the jointer here are nice and coplanar, and that just means that they're pretty much level with one another without any twist. And to do that, we'll just need some feeler knives or feeler gauges like this, and also a good quality straight edge or a spirit level. Now, there are people out there that would tell you not to use a spirit level because they're not good enough and blah blah blah. However, I believe that the tolerances that this is engineered to when it's manufactured is plenty good enough for the tolerances we need as woodworkers on our machine. So to test this, what we need to do is bring the in-feed and out-feed tables to be the same height, which is done with a small hand screw at the back here. And with the level firmly clamped onto one of the tables, come in with your set of feeler knives and check for any gaps. And if you have an uneven gap, so say you can get a feeler gauge in at the near side but not the far side, you'll have to make some adjustments to your table. Now, this machine came perfectly tuned from the factory, so I didn't need to make any adjustments. But if you do need to adjust one of your tables, it's just done by adjusting the two little set screws at either side of the table until everything's just right. Now, this is a really tedious job, and it does take a while because it doesn't quite behave the way you would think. So your rear set screw may not actually make the rear of the table come up. So make sure that you're in a good headspace when you start this, have a cup of tea or whatever with you, and just take your time and constantly check with those feeler gauges. So you'd want to check the front of your table, you'd want to check the back of your table, and you'd also want to check diagonally, so corner to corner. So after checking all your tables, it's probably a good idea to give everything a bit of a coat of wax, and that will make sure it stays free of rust for a while, so it will protect it, and also ensure that all your workpieces will run smoothly over those surfaces. And also it should probably reset your table height. So your outfeed table, that needs to be set perfectly level with the top point of your knife's arc. So as you rotate the cutter head, your knife's highest point there should be the same level as your outfeed table. And to check that, you just use a ruler, which is hanging over the edge of the table, and just manually rotating the cutter head. Should just hear a slight rubbing. So if it's picking up the ruler and taking it with it, you know that your table's too low. And if you're not hearing anything, you know your table's too high. So to adjust that, it's just a small hand wheel, which on the outfeed table, because it very rarely gets adjusted, is done with a 24mm spanner. For the infeed table, I'll generally set mine about 1mm below that. So the amount of stock that's being removed is no more than 1mm. One last measurement that you do need to make sure you check, which I almost forgot about, is that the planing table is nice and parallel to the cutter head. So to do this, the best tool is a dial indicator and just a homemade jig for holding it. So this is just a little block of wood which I've planed to make sure that the bottom is nice and flat with a hand plane. And I obviously just screw it onto the side. And with this, we just run it on the table at either sides. So that way, this side and in the middle, and we just check our measurements. So on this machine, it was spot on across the width. The tolerances I was using is 0.01 of a millimeter, and that's the only bit of discrepancy. And with that sort of measurement, that can also just come down to the tip that you're using. So there's no point in adjusting this in my mind. Now, if you do need to make adjustments to your table, you'll see that there is 4 gib screws here, which you can adjust with an Allen key. So you would just loosen off the locking nut, and you would either twist it in or out, depending on which way your table needs to tilt, until you have it just right. Now, power for this machine is kind of up to you to supply the cord. So what you get is you get this plug here, which plugs into the machine, and everything else is up to you. So whether you want this to be hardwired into your into your circuit or whatever, or you want it to be plugged into a dedicated circuit, like a 15 amp circuit like I'm doing, the cabling is up to you. So just make sure that you consult an electrician or a Sparky in cable sizes. And if you're not comfortable installing a plug, make sure you get someone else to do it for you that has the correct qualifications. Because really, without this working properly, your machine's not going to work and you could do some damage. Okay, so with everything set, let's fire it up and see how it goes. So like always with any machine, when you're firing it up for the first time after working it, make sure that everything's plugged in and where it should be, give it a visual check. Now I like to fire it up quickly and then shut it off, and if you know anything makes any noise, you know that you need to investigate that. Okay, so there's our first fire up, and there was no weird noises, everything looks good. So let's fire it up and we'll send through a piece of work. Wow. So I've never seen a straight knife machine of any sort create results like this. I mean, this has got a sheen to it with absolutely no blade marks at all. I mean, usually a straight knife cutter head, you have little dimples that you can feel. You might not be able to see, but you can feel. But on this Tersa cutter head here, wow. I mean, I know it's only pine, so it's nice and soft for it. But still, I mean, look at that. That is crazy. Anyway, let's see how the thicknesser goes and make sure that's all looking good. So to change from jointing to thicknessing, all you have to do is remove the fence. So that's just a quick turn of a knob, and that just lifts off. Flip this blade guard out of the way, so that's just a quick release, so one lever up and down. And then with these two little quick release knobs underneath each table, lift them out of the way. Flip the dust hood over. This lever engages the feed roller, so you just press that down and you're set. So as you can see, that while explaining it, that takes no time at all. So really quick changeover. Alright, so I cranked that again to 30 mil, exactly on the dot, and that is exactly 30 mil on the dot. So I don't even need to adjust this ruler, it's absolutely perfect. So that's just a quick overview of the assembly and setup of the MiniMax machine. As you can see, super high quality machine, incredibly accurate from the factory. I mean, I didn't have to do anything other than make sure that that fence was square. Obviously, the quality of the cut is incredible on this thing. I couldn't even dream of a nicer result than this. This is hit it with 220 grit sandpaper almost, and you'll be done. So all in all, a really nice machine to set up. Really easy. It made sense. The instructions are really nice. And while it took a little bit of time to get that, get everything done, it's easily doable in an afternoon. So I know this obviously isn't a video that's targeted towards everyone, but for those that did watch and stay all the way through, thanks for watching. Make sure you stick around and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be seeing you in the next video.